Well, I'm not talking first.
First rule of negotiations, he who speaks first loses.
I'm sitting here as long as it takes.
I'm not speaking first. All right, welcome back. This is the Massive Passive Income Show. I'm Jason.
And I'm Colter. And we're going to be talking about becoming a better negotiator, and here are all the points that we're going through. We have, 10 points right here, but we're going to talk about silence in negotiations, who speaks first last, or who speaks first loses.
There you
go. Don't be afraid to walk away if you don't get your price. Know your market, know the value, what you're chasing, listen to the needs of the other person, creating a win-win transaction, not getting emotional in the deal, know what your price is, fall in love with the numbers, not the deal, and you know what? You will be able to become a better negotiator, and that is our goal and objective in this conversation. Yeah, so part of what you saw at the beginning of the show is that nobody broke the silence, and so a lot is said of he who speaks first loses.
Yeah.
And that isn't always the case, right? But it is in some cases, right? When we come to a conflict point, or we come to a point of, this is a hard dollar difference, whoever speaks first tends to lose.
Yeah.
Could or could not be the case. It depends on the tension in the room. It depends on how the conversation's been flowing. It depends on who's been put in the position of power to take the next step. But this misconception that, hey, you know what, if you say the price first, you're definitely out, right? But how do you advertise a golf cart for sale for $2,500 if you're not going to put it out there to say, hey, it's $2,500?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you've lost. It just means that
there's a starting point.
You have a starting point.
Yep.
You have to have the conversation with somebody and start somewhere.
And usually the negotiations start after you have a price, and then you negotiate a lesser price. Like somebody says, okay, I know you want $2,500, but for that golf cart, but I'm willing to give you $2,000. And you're like, you know what, I'm not budging from $2,500. Well, man, I could maybe do $2,200, you do $2,200. I'll do $2,300. And then, man, I can't do any more than $2,300. And then sometimes it'll go silent, at that point. And so usually the person who, if they want it bad enough, they're going to speak. And so we don't want anybody to ever think you got to walk away from a deal to prove a point. If you want the deal, know what your price you're willing to pay, and then hold to that price. And if you can't get the price, then be willing to walk away. And I've walked away from a few things before, and I've had people call me a day later or 2 days later and say, hey, you know what? I'll make that price. And usually what I try to do is get them even less than what my price was. Well, that was $2,300. I'll do $2,200 now because I've already got some other deals I'm working on, and that price won't work for me. And most of the time they'll take it. And sometimes I go back to my original, and they'll end up taking the original, even though we've had 2 or 3 days go by. Because what they're hoping to do is they're hoping to get a better price. They're hoping to keep it advertising out there. Somebody else show up for the golf cart and pay more. But if nobody shows up for 3 days, they're like, well, I'd rather get $2,300 because that's what he said, than get nothing. And then they come back and say, okay, I'll take your $2,300. It's like, well, I'm not giving you $2,300 now. I'm already looking at 2 other deals.
Yeah.
Well, what will you give me? Well, I'll give you $2,000. And then sometimes you get it for 21 or 22. So sometimes it's not so much speak first. It's let's go through some skill sets. Let's do that because I'll get off on a tangent and then we won't accomplish anything. So yeah.
Well, and you have to get comfortable with silence.
Yes.
Right? And what you're doing is you're putting somebody in a position of where they just have to listen to the recurring topic that has been on both of your minds and what has been discussed already. And so you leaving the conversation and saying, hey, you know what, I'm okay, and waiting for that call 24 or 48 hours later, you just left them to 24 or 48 hours. If they're really thinking they want to get this deal done, that amount of silence is begging them to say, take a deal, right? And a bird in hand is better than 2 in the bush.
Yeah.
And that's just what we're introducing is we are giving them one opportunity to do the deal with us. And if they don't take it, we're okay with that. If they do take it and they land on a spot where they're comfortable with, now they get to run with it. So you have to get comfortable with the silence And the fact that you've put some stop points in place that say, I do the deal this time, I don't do the deal that time.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's a starting point. Everybody always advertises everything for the top of what they want, knowing most people know they're going to have to negotiate down. So they always start high. So you got to find out what their bottom dollar is. And a lot of times they won't tell you unless you negotiate. One of the first things that comes out of my mouth is, oh, 2,500, huh? For the golf cart. Let's just, since you mentioned it, let's just go off that. 2,500 for the golf cart, huh? What's your bottom dollar? Oh, it's 2,500. I was like, come on, what's the least you'll take? Well, man, I really could do 2,500, but I'd probably take 2,300. Now you already got him $200. Now what I do is I go 2,000 or maybe even 1,800. Well, man, even 2,300, that seems a little high. And when you say it seems a little high, that seems like it also starts the conversation a little bit. So 2,500 seems a little high. What's your bottom dollar? And then you get them to come down. As soon as you can get them to come down, if they can come down 200, they'll come down another 300 most of the time. So I always start like 18. Would you take 1,800? Oh, I can't take $1,800. Well, what will you take? Well, I'll take 2,300. Man, I don't got 2,300. 2,300. That still seems high, right?
Yeah.
And then negotiate from there. And sometimes you can get a little bit less, or sometimes you might have to give them the 2,300. If they're really stubborn on $2,300, then be okay to walk away if your $2,000 is where you're at.
Yeah, and you come in with a price saying, hey, you know what, this is my price. Stick to your price, right? It's easy to spend an extra $500 or $300 to $500,000, just depending on the size of transaction we're doing. But it's easy to spend more than what you're comfortable with and overextend your budget, overextend your ability to make a profit if that's what you're trying to do. If you know that the golf cart market is, $2,000 and there's no reason to spend the $2,500 because you can find a $2,000 one all day long. This one just so happens to be the only one up right now.
Yeah.
You have to understand that is the price. That's the market. That's what's available. That's what should be demanded, and that's what should be expected in going and getting a deal done.
And with having that out there, you got to know your market too. Because I told a guy once, I was like, "Oh man, these are all over the internet for $2,000." He goes, "There's not one right now for $2,000." He goes, "I've looked." I'm like, well, I've seen him in the past, maybe in the past, but not right now. He said, so I'm like, dang it, he's informed, right? Because sometimes they're not informed, and I have seen it for $2,000, maybe not right then, but I have seen it for that. Mm-hmm. And so you never want to go in lying, try to lie your way to a good deal, but be informed really well. I used to go to auctions all the time in Boise for houses. And there was a group there, Guerrilla Capital. Some people have been in real estate, probably seen their name. They were coming through Idaho, buying a ton of stuff back in 2008, 9, and 10. And I showed up once, and this kid that worked for Guerrilla Capital, he was just going to auction and buying. Well, he gets a bonus, which I found out. If he bought a certain amount of properties at a certain amount loan to value, or what it's worth out there in the market and what he could buy it for. And he came to me, he's like, look, I've got one more house to buy and I get my bonus. What would it take for you not to buy today? I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, you got the money? I was like, yeah, we want to buy the property. He said, I'll give you $3,000 if you don't buy. I'm like, $3,000? How about $5,000? All right, $5,000. I'll walk away right now. So he wrote me, he had me a check for $5,000. Wrote it, says, here, take it. He says, and then I didn't bid. What was crazy was somebody else showed up and bid him up anyways. So then I showed up another time, and I was willing to bid, and he did it again. He paid me $3,000 not to bid. I'm like, wow, I could have a little part-time gig here, just showing up. Yeah. Not even if I was, going to buy. But he eventually, we started negotiating, because sometimes he ticked me off so bad because they weren't in it for the deal. They were just in it to buy it. I was in it. I had to make money. He was just there as a purchaser, and this Guerrilla Capital was just putting money into real estate. So they really didn't care. I mean, they wanted a good deal, but it wasn't a good deal like I needed in order to make the numbers work so I could fix it up and resell it. Yeah. And there were some times I purposely just bid him up because I was so pissed. And I overbid what I was willing to pay just because I knew he wanted it so bad. Mm-hmm. So I've repented for that. But sometimes you get really tied up into these things, and that's the thing. You can't get emotional. It's got to be about the deal. You can't get emotional. You got to have your price.
Yeah. Well, and there's a strategy in that at auctions of like, okay, if you're focused on getting a deal, and the other person's focused on getting a deal, if you can help them spend all of their money, that means that they're not coming to the next deal.
There you go. That's a great deal too. Yeah, seriously.
So even if Guerrilla Capital or whoever it is, you want to make sure that, and you also want it to be a competitive market, right? A competitive market allows for there to be the right pricing and the right values on products and services, et cetera. And so there's a supply and demand thing there as well.
Yeah.
If I want to pick up a house for $100,000, but somebody else is willing to pay $120,000, they should pay $120,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the supply and demand market.
Yeah.
But if I allow them to buy it for $101, just because I was only willing to go $100, but I know they're going to pay $120, there's tactic in that when it comes to auctions, and
you gotta keep your poker face pretty straight.
Yeah.
Because there's some.
Or else you're going to end up with a deal for $120 that you didn't want.
Exactly.
And I can't say that I've played that game enough that you're more experienced at that than I am. But you also have to listen to the needs of the other person, right? I mean, if somebody's come to you and said, hey, you know what, I don't want you to bid, I'm going to give you a couple $1,000s to just step away from this one. That's one thing. You're going to step away and not do the deal. But if you know that you need to go and compete on a product, then go and compete.
Yeah.
So
let's go through some highlights of what we're going to talk about. We've probably talked about a few of them.
I think we talked about a lot of them. We talked about silence. We talked about he who speaks first loses. Don't be
and the silence one. Don't be afraid to be silent. Don't get nervous in the silence, because sometimes people they don't like silence, and so they just start yapping. They start talking, and you start talking, you'll talk yourself into something you don't want. So silence is okay.
Yeah, if you fill all the dead space with ideas and other things to think about, etc., you're going to move away from the deal, or you're going to ruin the deal that you had just negotiated.
Yeah, or you'll talk yourself in and out of the deal in the same conversation.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So another one was don't be afraid to walk away if you don't get your price.
Yep.
We talked about that. Bob Snyder actually does an incredible job of teaching a negotiations class.
Great class.
Incredible negotiator, businessman. Know your market, know your product. What's your value?
Yeah. I think that's really important.
Chase.
When you go in to buy something, you got to know what it is you're buying, and you got to know what the value of that property is in fixed up value or out on the open market if it's a good deal, and you got to be able to act fast. I learned a long time ago I don't carry around large amounts of cash, but I carry around some cash with me because there's times when you'll run into a deal, and if you've got cash, you can get that deal. If you don't, and you're like, hey, I'll give you $2,000 for that, but I got to run to the bank. Can you give me 48 hours to get it? Someone's going to show up $2,000, they're end up buying it. Yeah. And especially if you know the value of that thing, it may be worth $4,000 in the open market. You buy it for $2,000, turn around and either resell it or keep it or whatever it is. So always know the value of what you're going to bid on or what you're going to buy from this person. Because if you don't, he's going to persuade you to pay more for it. He's going to say, if he knows his market better than you do, and he's going to say, hey, these are all over the, $2,500 is the going rate. In fact, I'm giving you a good deal because I did this, and this on that. And the person's like, oh, really? And you've got that much extra money into it? He's going to persuade you to give him his price. But if you're like, no way, and you may not even have to say that, you may just say it in your head, there's no way that's worth $2,500. I've seen it for $2,000, and I don't care what you've done to the thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you got to make sure, never go into a deal to negotiate something where you don't know what you're buying, because you're going to give them their price.
Yeah.
Especially if they know what they have. I love that when people say, don't lowball me, I know what I have. I'm always like, do you really know what you have? Do you really know what the worth is? Because they've got a Subaru Baja that's $14,000. I'm like, yeah, you know what you have, but you think it's worth a lot more than what it actually is,
Yeah.
So anyways, my son's into Subaru Bajas. That's why I made that mention.
The Subaru comes up.
Yeah.
So, and also listen to the needs of the other person. So I think as you're talking about this, you're negotiating, like, what is it that somebody is actually in need of? Because it may not be that they need all of the cash up front. I mean, if you're going in and buying a $200,000 house and they owe $192,000, they may not need $8,000 in cash. They just need to make sure they don't have to pay the next $1,000 monthly payment.
Yeah.
And so you have to listen to the needs of this person, or it may be they just need $500 because they're going to skip town to Florida, and because they're going there for a new job, or they've got something they need to be there for, or they got to go take care of, an an aging parent or grandparent, like understand the needs of the person. And if you can walk down like what those needs are and then back into a way of being able to service each one of those needs and help them out of the situation they're in. I think we mentioned in the past, like we're in business to solve problems for a profit.
Yes.
And so if we can help them solve those problems, well, then we should. But if we haven't identified what those are in the meantime of us having a conversation and a negotiation, then we will fail to address all of the needs.
I always tell people, get comfortable asking the uncomfortable. Because that's what it is. Get comfortable with saying, hey, I'm going to ask you a few questions that are none of my business. And if they say, and then I say, is that okay? Sure. Then I ask, so how much do you own the property? What is it you're looking to do with the property? Where is it you're looking to go? What is it you need right now? What is it you need long term? I start asking those questions, and it's amazing. People will open up. They really will. They'll open up. And another phrase I use all the time, if they say something, well, I need to move to Pittsburgh by within 30 days. Tell me more about that. So then I was like, well, my job got transferred, and my wife and kids are already there, and I got to get out of here. And well, how much do you need to get there? Ask the questions. And that's the thing. It might feel, oh, that's none of my business. Well, you're there to not only help them out, but to also create a deal for you and to get them out of a bad situation. So get comfortable asking the uncomfortable. And I think that's where deals become awesome. As soon as you can figure out what their pain is, whether you can solve their pain or not, and then if you can solve it and still make a deal for you and it's a win-win for both, you probably hear that in real estate all the time. Create a win-win. Well, win-win isn't giving them their price, cash, and you walking away. That's a win for him, but is it a win for you, right? So if you can create a win and he needs this, and this, plus he needs his house sold, well, let's solve all four of these things and we'll still get rid of this payment, or we'll get rid of this thing that's dragging you down. It may not be that we're going to pay cash for it and get rid of it, but we'll get rid of the stress of it. And maybe that's all they're looking for.
Yeah. Well, like how you said, you make it a win-win.
Yeah.
It's by understanding what it is that winning looks like to them, because we're coming in hoping or expecting that we can find a win for us.
Yeah.
Because we're in the discovery process of identifying whether it actually can be or not. Because we'll walk away from deals that aren't going to be a win.
Which we have.
We've had to walk away.
They're just way over leveraged, and there's just no room. There's nothing we can do. There's really nothing. And I'm not going to go broke trying to help somebody out. I love helping people out, but it's got to be that we can make some money, or even if I can help them, just like the one person that you talked to, that you were able to get them on the phone and walk them through the process of talking to their bank and get them another 30 days so that they could feel a little comfortable, so they could get out of the place and get going. That was helping them out. You didn't make any money on that, but it didn't cost you anything except for just helping them.
Yeah. No, it took some time, and at the end of the day, it was what was right for that person and the situation and their ability to be able to extend past the pain that they were in so that they could get through to something better.
Yeah.
So I love the phrase, fall in love with the numbers before falling in love with the deal.
Sometimes that's hard.
Oh,
you fall in love with the deal before you find out what the numbers are.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of your perception of what it may be.
Yeah, you're thinking, oh man, this is a beautiful 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Yeah. It's in the right neighborhood. It's got all the features. It's close to the stores. Yeah. It's close to that. And then you're like...
Looks like they've owned it for 10 years, so there's probably some great equity, but you don't realize they've got a HELOC on it or something.
So then you go in and you're trying to figure out, oh, okay, I can make this deal work. Yeah. Wait, that's not as good as I thought it was going to be. Oh, I'm going to do this so I can make this work. And, we have to fall in love with the numbers before we fall in love with the deal.
Yeah.
Or else we're going to be stuck with a deal that just isn't as good as it could have been, because we're like, oh, well, I've got to have the facade and the curb appeal and the nicely appointed living room and kitchen, instead of saying, hey, you know what? This living room and kitchen and bedrooms and bathrooms can produce $400 a month in free cash flow, whereas this one is zero.
Yeah.
And we have to balance those things. Fall in love with the numbers before you fall in love with the deal.
Definitely. What else we got on there?
So I think we have some books that we want to recommend. There's some that we have enjoyed. I love the one, Never Split the Difference. This guy was a FBI negotiator, hostage situations. He does an incredible job just breaking down negotiations with hostile environments And
It's a good book.
It's an amazing book,
Yeah.
right? And the loss of the making the deal is a human life.
Yeah.
And he does such an incredible job there.
And then another one that I really like is Sell or Be Sold. I love, because I'm a salesman, I love to be sold. It drives me crazy when I go in to buy something and I go to the salesman, I'm like, hey, ask him a few questions, and they just stare at me. Or they grab the box and read the box, or they grab something to read. I was like, no, tell me why I should buy this today. I'm coming out of here with a TV, or I'm coming out of here with something. I want to buy. I'm ready to buy. Sell me. And the art of selling has really I told that to a kid, and he's like, I don't know, he's probably 21, 22 years old. And I'm like, hey, I said, I'm going to buy something today, just to let you know, but can I help you out a little bit? He's like, sure. I was like, okay. If a guy comes up like me and says, hey, tell me about this product, I said, you need to learn all you can about the products you're selling. Well, I'm all over the place. I said, learn as much as you can. Do you have any downtime? Well, sure. I said, instead, spend on your phone, find out what your product is. Do some research. Find out what the best one is. Find out what Best Buy sells the most of. I went through all this different stuff. Anyways, I went on for like 10 minutes, and he looks at me, he's like, dude, I really don't care that much. He goes, I get an hourly wage. He goes, I could care less whether you buy from me or not. And I'm like, wow, that's too bad, because as a salesman, I love to be sold. I love somebody to come and say, man, you need to buy this today. This is why this is the best deal, and this is why you want to buy this one. And I love that because I'm a salesperson,
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, Sell or Be Sold.
Yes.
Another book. The other is The Art of Persuasion,
Which is great. I went through that one about 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. I'm trying to remember, but great. And it's all about. He talks about posture, the persuasion part of posture, but that still goes back to some of these skills we already talked about. Speak first, willing to walk away. You've got to be willing to do some of those things, because that's the persuasion part of it. Mm-hmm. If you're walking away, I mean, I remember I had somebody that I was negotiating with, and he walked in, I'm like, he's going to walk away for $50. Are you kidding me? And so I went down $50 because I wanted to sell the stupid thing, and he got it. That's fine. Sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's like, hey, you know what? I either sell it to him and get $50 less, or I got to walk through this process with 3 other people showing up at my doorstep at all times during the day, all through my time. And so you've got to make a decision when you're selling something that time is money, and if you have to give them another $50 because you've already went through and walked around 5 or 6 other different deals or whatever you're negotiating on, sometimes it's worth an extra $50 just to get it. You know what I mean? Or go less than $50 or sell it $100 less, just because you can be like, you know what, I'm done with this thing. My son's motorcycle was one of those. We had it up as high as $3,200, and 10, 15 different people came through. Nobody was going to give us $3,200. Somebody came along and said, we take $2,200. I'm not doing $2,200. I said, but I would do 25 done. And I'm like, I could have sold that 3 months ago for $2,500. I could have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I wanted more money. So what's your time worth? That's the other thing you got to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you've shown that motorcycle 15 times,
yeah,
right, and you come off of $3,200 to $2,500, if you could have gotten rid of 14 of those conversations, a $700 difference, right?
Yeah.
That's $50 per time that it cost you to try and get that same $2,500.
Yeah, I had somebody offer me, my second person that called me, offered me $2,700 sight unseen. He was going to cover for Utah. And I did sell 3 months later for $2,500.
Also the time value of money and like all these other things. Like,
I
you get really nerdy about this.
But it was just barely got on the market for $3,200. I'm like, I'm not going to drop it that much,
Yeah.
But looking back, I should have done it.
Well, we hope this conversation has helped you become a better negotiator, at least think outside the box of like how negotiations can happen, some of the conversation points you'll have, the active and the silent parts of the conversation that happen in negotiation. But at the end of the day, this is meant to help our audience become better negotiators. And you can't be a negotiator if you're not willing to make an offer.
Yes.
So make offers. We've talked about that. Have conversations, start conversations, trying to establish uncommon ground. And you know what? Just even with friends, like it's fun to role play and give the idea of like, hey, you know what? You have something that I want. Let's have a conversation. Let's negotiate. Let's practice through that. And hey, you know what? I want to buy your laptop. how much would you sell me your laptop for? And then just go back and forth. And then when it comes to, I'm going to negotiate $150,000 or $200,000 deal on a property, it makes it that much more or less painful for you to be able to get a deal done.
Yeah.
So we hope this helps in negotiations. And guess what? Even negotiators stuttered like I just did.
That's okay.
And at the end of the day, you're having real conversations with people to try and make win-win transactions. And the deal of a lifetime comes around but once a week, so go chase them.
Yeah, go out there and get it done.